Hello everyone, this is another episode of Gold as Girls. My name is Carla van Welstum. My co-host for today is Rachel Rappaport, and we have an amazing special guest, Rawan Osman. Welcome, Rawan, and we are so curious to listen to your stories and to learn from you, and we are really very pleased and happy that you wanted to join us.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure meeting both of you, especially Rachel, after finding a suitable time for all of us was complicated. My apologies.
Don't worry.
I understand. You're so busy. I understand it, and I'm just happy that we were able to pin it down to today. But anyway, I'd like to just provide some background for our viewers. Rawan Osman is a Syrian-Lebanese German activist advocating for peace with Israel. She previously served on the executive committee at PeaceComms and as speaker at SharakaNGO. Currently, she is studying Islamic and Jewish Studies at Heidelberg University and is founder of ArabsAsk. Additionally, Osman serves as the chairwoman of PostOctober7 EV. In her role with PeaceComms, she's documented cases of persecution of activists and political dissidents in the Arab world, advocating for normalization with Israel. At Sharaka, she organized speaking tours promoting the Abraham Accords and facilitated the participation of professionals and academics in Arab countries in a Holocaust education program. Welcome, Rawan. I'm so delighted to have you here as our special guest today because your work is so vitally important and we appreciate all that you do for Israel. So I'd like to ask you, for those of the viewers who aren't familiar with your background, if you could give us a little bit of your background history and what inspired you to become an Arab Zionist.
So thanks again to both of you and to our viewers. A brief summary of my background. I'm half Syrian, half Lebanese, which means half of my family, my father's family comes from Damascus, and my mother's family comes from the Bekaa Valley, one of the strongholds of Hezbollah in Lebanon, where I grew up. I attended a French Catholic school, and between a Sunni and Shiite family attending a Catholic school, I've always been an atheist. Nevertheless, I was one of many anti-Semites. We were brainwashed. We were subjected to intensive brainwashing, and this ideology still indoctrinates many generations into hating Israelis, whether you're secular or religious. And this is a different case than what Palestinians in Gaza are subjected to. For us, this is not a religious matter. It's out of principle that we hated the Israelis because they are enemies, they are hostile, and growing up through several wars between Lebanon and Israel, it is understandable when I add that the Israeli narrative was totally omitted from our existence. So we've only watched our version of the events, and it's important where the story starts. If you watch on the news that the Israelis attacked us out of the blue, and you are shown footage of horrific massacres, without you knowing that it is your own side, your own people who started this war because they kidnapped or killed 18-year-old soldiers, you would also feel outraged when you see what they choose to show you on the news. And only in my 20s, when I moved to Europe, it was a coincidence, I landed in a Jewish quarter and lived near one of the biggest synagogues in France. that I started understanding that the Jews are human beings like us. To you, it might sound obvious, but of course, to us, it wasn't obvious. To me, it wasn't. I had never seen a Jew until I was 25, 26. And it was shocking, and I was scared. I literally had a panic attack the first time I saw Jews, and I could identify them because they were ultra-Orthodox. But slowly, it opened my eyes watching them. I understood they are not enemies, they're normal human beings. They were kind to me. So I started researching the background, the history of the Middle East, and I realized that everything I knew about Israel and about the Jews was through the Secretary General of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, and reading about the history of Hezbollah and him personally. I was angry for a long time because I realized all these wars with Israel were senseless. The loss of life could have been easily avoided if the Arabs, also back in the 20s and the 30s and 40s, accepted to share the land with the Israelis.
Yeah, it's such a sad conclusion.
We learned also at school that the Jews are alien to the region. These Jews who live among us are European Jews. They came and stole the land. They stole the land of the Palestinians, Palestine. This is why the Palestinians live in misery. And when you are told the story this way in history class, it implies that Palestine used to be a country with specific political borders, which is not the case. But it's part of the propaganda you are taught. And the fact that this conflict is not just ideological, it's not merely theoretical. It costs a lot of people their lives. That led me to finally make a decision that I too have a responsibility knowing what I know, having lived in the Middle East in several countries, and then being one of the few who lived among the Israelis, who work and study with Israelis, who know the history of the conflict. I do have a responsibility, we all do, to try and do something. And that led me to being today an outspoken Zionist. And I identify as a Zionist because where I come from, Zionist is an insult. And being someone who has a lot of admiration for the Zionist project movement, I felt the need, I'm compelled to reclaim the term. If we want to resolve the conflict between the Arabs and the Israelis, we have to start by redefining, explaining what Zionism is.
Yeah, that is so true. And Jews nor Israelis have been very good PR people in the past. And when I listen to you, how you explain this, the vision on stolen land that is shared by many young people in the US and in Europe, because it is spread like there too very strongly. And we are such a small group. I mean, 0.2% of the world population. And we are like worldwide. There are so many opinions that are false and lies. And it's so about Zionism to begin with. And it's so hard to change that. I remember I saw in the newspaper in the Netherlands one day, the big fat letters, the UN says or declared resolution, Zionism is racism. And I was like frozen because I knew then this is going to give a problem in the future. And it was in the 70s, maybe 75, 78. And yeah, voila, that's really, that really happened like that, totally. And I'm really very proud of you that you say, I'm a Zionist, and that you really say that and dare to say that that is such a controversial idea for many people that it might make them curious, like, oh, why? How come? I mean, you're from Syria, you're from Lebanon, you're from Germany. And do you meet people that attack you on it too? How is that for you?
It is normal for Arabs to react negatively when you say this to their face.
Yeah.
If they try to insult me, like, you're a Zionist, I say yes, and I'm proud.
Yeah.
But what was surprising to me is how aggressive some Europeans get when they hear this.
Yeah.
And I wasn't aware that the far left in Europe, as I'm sure it is in US, even in Canada,
Oh, yeah.
they can be quite aggressive because I'm betraying my own people. And this patronizing tone, they are not aware how despicable it is at times, because they want to educate us on the history of our region. And they attack me because I don't fit the stereotype of the Arab in their mind. They are disappointed because they automatically, or they constantly assume that, oh, you're an Arab, so would you like to come to this demonstration? You're an Arab. How do you feel about this genocide in Gaza? And once they realize that I'm a Zionist and I'm an ardent supporter of Israel, they become very hostile. And that to me was new a few years ago during the war. That was sparked in the Sheikh Jarrah. So that Gaza war was an eye-opener for me, and I learned to watch what I say in Europe. Yeah. I'm used to the Arabs, I know how to handle them. But that was very strange.
Yeah.
Especially that these far-right activists or outspoken people think they know everything better, and they think that their activism is coming from a good place because it's a binary problem between an oppressor and an oppressed. Yeah. And of course, if we are good people, we have to automatically defend the Palestinians. Yeah. We don't need to read the history of the conflict. It's so obvious. It's black and white. The Israelis have an army, and they're killing helpless Palestinians. Yeah. And the devil lies in the nuance, in the history of a very complicated and complex conflict, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you brought up the far right. I would add there the far left as well. And there comes that superiority thing, like, we know better. We have good principles.
I meant far left. If I said far right, then I said that
I was surprised because I don't hear so many far right demonstrations. I can give you a very innocent example. One of my dearest friends, she's not Jewish, in the Netherlands, we had quite some Syrian refugees, right? And it was very normal that Europe would take so many refugees from people that are running for their lives. And she is visiting that Syrian family once a month to help them a little bit. So very nice. When I tell her October 7 that I read that a Syrian family, one of my friends in their street, was dancing in the street of joy, from joy, what happened October 7th, she didn't want to hear from it. So you see, the whole thing is already she's pretty left as well, with a very good heart. You know, it's like they don't understand it. They think they serve a good cause. And then there is that guilt feelings in Europe, mainly in Germany, but also in the Netherlands and some in France, because of the Holocaust, the Shoah. And you're tired of being guilty. And it's so great if your previous victims are also bad people. So that helps also in a way to criticize. And if you live in Germany, you probably noticed a little bit of that.
I agree with you. It's a very interesting point. But that I understood after October 7th.
Yeah.
Because even before Israel responded, people started justifying, before Hamas justified, they were denying some of the atrocities Hamas committed.
Yeah.
Before Hamas denied it. That was mind-boggling. But then I understood, of course, if you can portray the Israelis as monsters, that can absolve you of some of your guilt. And this is what's happening sometimes. But also, and I meant the far left, because I think they are the biggest problem we have now. And the biggest problem, I must add, is this a strange marriage between the far left and Islamism.
Yeah.
And I think a very interesting example, if people forgot, but I'm pretty sure many Westerners don't know this. This happened before in Iran. When Khomeini was celebrated in Paris, he was treated like a hero and he was cherished by the left.
Yeah.
And then he returned to Iran victorious, and he transformed this country into an Islamic republic.
Yeah.
With the help of his allies, among them were the communists, the leftists, those who wanted equality. And what did he do to them? Executed most of them. They got rid of their allies, the leftists who helped them. And when I see what's happening on the streets in the West, people who, in order to make a point, for example, participate in demonstrations naked or half naked, they would shoot you,
Absolutely.
You in Gaza.
That's the irony. That's the thing that kills me about this. Like the Queers for Palestine. It's like, how do you not know how long you'd last in Palestine if you're gay, LGBTQ, whatever? You wouldn't. And yet these woke people are advocating for the genocide of Israel, really.
It's very sad that it's to that level. People that will be leaders in the future, how they are raised in colleges and educated to think. I'm very frightened for that picture.
Their activism, what they're doing on the streets, legitimizes Hamas. And I do understand that many queer activists, gay Americans, Canadians, they think, when am I ever going to go to Gaza? So I don't care how they treat gays. But the question is, if you were in trouble, all of you who are half naked, just to make a point, like there were topless, two ladies who wrote something in support of Gaza, like topless in Germany, I think. If you guys are in trouble, would Hamas and their crowd support you? It is incredible. Or, for example, if Hamas takes over in a different country, if this mentality, this Islamist mentality takes over, what will become of you? You're supporting them. Would they support you? So it's absurd.
It's so interesting. Yeah, and that brings me to something that I have thought about a lot. I was like 20 and I bought a book of Nawal al-Saadawi, the first Egyptian medical doctor. I don't know if you know about her, and she has been the first one that was addressing the female genital mutilation. And she was put in prison. And I see that Israel is helping as much as they can the resistance in Iran, supporting of the women. And there are so many women in all Arabic countries that need some support, and it is always silence. And it is like, I was in Holland also told, and I spoke about that. Nobody spoke about it. I spoke about it, and you're Jewish, and you're saying that about what happened there. And I said, yeah, because it's terrible. Burning brides in India, it's terrible. We need to know the women, as a women movement or women organization, we need to stand up and support. Nothing, nada.
I must say that I am very grateful to the Iranian people and to the Kurds who are courageous and who, you see, often joining demonstrations against Hamas or pro-Israel in the West.
Yeah.
These are brave men and women.
Yeah, I know.
On a different note, especially someone with my background, considering what's happening in Lebanon and Syria for many, many years now, how people are suffering because of the axis of resistance, because of this alliance of evil led by Iran. So we see what the Assad regime has done to the Syrian people in Syria. We see what Hezbollah has brought upon the people of Lebanon. And I haven't seen protests in the West or in the Middle East in support of the cause of this, of our own, of the Lebanese and the Syrians. Forget about them. The Palestinians are our highest priority because the world revolves around the Palestinians and their cause. The Assad regime has literally starved Palestinians to death in Damascus, in the Yarmouk camp. They besieged the camp, and the children were eating grass and cockroaches. Nobody was outraged because the Jews were not involved.
Correct.
And when we see this hypocrisy, it is very, very difficult to believe that the axis of resistance is acting this way really because they are interested in the right for self-determination for the Palestinians, when they would not grant the same right to their own people. They kill and torture their own. So this is not, it obviously is not about the rights or equal rights or a Palestinian state or the well-being of the Palestinians. This is a political conflict, a struggle for power between the Shia and the Sunni worlds, between a world led by Iran and a different world led by Saudi Arabia, the UAE. And this world has come to good terms with the Israelis. They were, at least Saudi, they were about to join the Abraham Accords. UAE, Morocco, Bahrain already joined the Abraham Accords. We were going into a good direction. And just before October 7th, MBS of Saudi Arabia said, the Kingdom of Saudi would join the Abraham Accords if we can be reassured that the Palestinians will get a state. And this upsets Hamas. They don't want a Palestinian state. They don't want a Palestinian state next to an Israeli state. They want the Palestinian state instead of the Israeli state. This will never be achieved through diplomatic channels. This is achieved through resistance, through terrorism. You have to terrorize the Israelis enough for them to pack and leave.
Wow.
Well, it's, it's such a loaded subject, and because it's so ironic that in the West and in the American universities, these students who are doing these protests, whether they're Muslim or not, they really, it's so hypocritical because, as you say, they never protest for all of the other atrocities being done to Christians in other parts of the world or Muslims, the Uyghurs. And so it's really frustrating, the lack of education and the moral superiority that they feel without really having a clue. And I think that the bottom line is, for many, it's about anti-Semitism. It's about Jew hatred. It's not just the ignorance, but why protest this issue of the Palestinians when you're not protesting any other issue?
I think that it has to do, sorry, Rochelle, also with the idea was totally hot today about the colonists and the suppressed.
Right.
And, oh, wow, there's a place. So let's believe the lies and then we have this problem that we can solve now. We won't want to leave America. America was colonized, but we are comfortable here, so we are going to find another target, and we go to criticize that without even knowing history. And what surprises me too is that it's so normal that Angela Merkel says, okay, we take in 1 million of Syrian people that don't speak the language, don't know the culture, are totally aliens, very hard to build a new life in a totally different country. And maybe several of them don't even respect the Western way of thinking. But
And they will never assimilate either.
nobody, and will not. Yeah, I see that in the Netherlands, but some do. There are great examples too. I mean, absolutely.
Right.
But
Thank
then,
you for
yeah,
Thank you for bringing this particular point up. As someone who still has a lot of family members in Syria, I have to say, I left Syria in 2011,
Mhm.
3 months after the protests started. And I know, I have seen it. People were shot dead. Without them, they weren't ISIS. They weren't terrorists. They were demanding a better, somewhat better living standards because the country is very poor. And people live in constant fear because of the nasty, nasty intelligence apparatus. That was a fair cause. Nevertheless, as a woman who has 2 younger sisters, and we moved to Syria when I was 18, they were younger, and we have experienced how misogynistic this culture is, how people touch you on the street. And if this happened in Beirut, for example, in Lebanon, where half of the population used to be Christian, anyone would come to help you. An old grandma would smack somebody who tries to touch you to lift your skirt up. This, however, was tolerated in Damascus. If a man touches you and you're not covered, you asked for it, so they give you bizarre looks. Knowing this, when I had been living in Germany for 2-3 years, when the refugees came over, and Angela Merkel said, "Wir schaffen das. We can do this. We can manage." I was shocked. I know that the world let the Syrian people down. And when you pretend like this is not happening, although al-Assad regime used chemical weapons against Syrians,
his own people.
and when you didn't intervene, when the world lacked morality back then, the world collectively will pay for that. And we still do. However, the solution was not to invite 1 million misogynists and anti-Semites.
Yeah.
Not 1 million Syrians were anti-Semitic and misogynists, but many of them were. And unless we call a spade, we cannot solve the issue. So I was frightened because I left the Middle East because I don't fit there. And I moved to Germany because I identify with these Western values, and I wanted to raise my son within such a society. Now, the Syrians came, problems started emerging. My friends, European friends, thought I'm being melodramatic. Come on, how bad can it be? Until we started hearing stories about gang rapes on New Year's Eve. Young men touching young women when they go to swimming pools, to the point where swimming pools sometimes said no refugees allowed.
Oh.
What was happening was awful. And we soon realized that the government didn't have a plan. They wanted to help.
You don't understand it. That's alien.
They didn't understand the culture. And I was thinking when I heard the statement Angela Merkel said, I really hope she has consultants who told her what she's inviting in Europe. And this problem stopped being a German problem. It's now a European problem. It's a Western problem.
Yeah.
And we have seen not long ago, Arabs, Muslims marching even in Amsterdam and in northern Germany, waving ISIS flags, waving Hamas flags, Hezbollah and ISIS flags. I thought there was a consensus on that, at least. And in the Netherlands, I saw an interesting demonstration where people were saying, إما الإسلام, either Islam, إما الجزية or tax, إما الحرب or war. It was a declaration of war on a Western society while the police is standing, watching them, probably not understanding a word, and probably granting them the right to protest and to, after all, it's their freedom of expression, freedom of speech. I don't think the West understands how critical the situation is and how scary it is for us who are familiar with this ideology and what is happening on the streets and how dramatic the situation can turn as the West is not prepared to what seems like it's about to hit us all. And this is all intertwined partly with the refugee crisis, with this influx of mostly Muslim men, this influx of Muslim culture and ideology that the West is not familiar with, and it seems is not prepared to deal with, except the strategy seems to be forever appeasing the Muslims, don't upset them, and if you dare criticize, you are labeled racist, far-right, Islamophobic, because otherwise some of them might get really angry and detone a bomb and target civilians, and we don't want that. So keep indulging them. But I think today the problem has become so big, it does not fit under the carpet anymore. It's about time we speak about the elephant in the room.
Yeah. Yes and no. In England, in London, they found a solution to put Jews in a separate bus, segregation. Then they won't be bothered by the Muslims. When you have Jews in a bus, all Jews here.
I haven't heard this.
Yeah, that's a pretty recent thing. And what's so scary to me about it is that's a great way to attack the people on the bus. Because you know that they're all Jews.
Yeah.
You isolate them, you make them a target.
Exactly.
Back to 200 years ago. And you brought this up about Europe, but always bothered me too is there is no understanding of the honor killings, right? And there is at least one a month in London, but a lot of them are avoided because they're brought to India or to other countries and you don't know. And I've seen it in the Netherlands that the honor killings, they don't know what to do with it. And it is like the law system in Europe, in police, education, whatever, they are not familiar with all this. It's like after the facts. And it gets
when
worse.
You say they don't know what to do with it.
Exactly.
What do we do in the West about it? First, we enforce the law. Second, we expose it. We have to address it.
Yeah.
And we're talking about details. These are not minor details. These are tragedies. But even after terror attacks, can you find an imam who would condemn terrorism?
Yeah.
After October 7th, can you find an imam who condemns rape? I've been desperately trying to find one theologian, a Muslim imam, moderate or radical, to answer one question. Is rape forbidden in Islam?
No.
This is a very nobody accepts to answer it
Not
because
forbidden.
what are they going to say?
Forbidden. You can
a Muslim or a non-Muslim?
It's allowed. Under certain circumstances, it's permitted. And people don't know a lot about these things. And so, when they are protesting, they really seem to be missing so much information, because if they knew what they're really protesting, I find it hard to believe that they would actually continue to do that. But I think that, I'm not talking about Muslims here. I'm talking about like American students that are not Muslim. I think
many of them are, yes,
yeah,
they're protesting out of ignorance.
Right, exactly, because they don't know, which river it is, which sea it is. They don't know when they're, oftentimes when you see these young students being interviewed and they're asked about raping women and is that okay? And it's like, they didn't know that that happened. It is mind-boggling that university students are so illiterate when it comes to this kind of knowledge.
There is a professor in England, a female. She is studying and she's teaching Islamic law. And she says if a woman needs to be humiliated and put in her place, it's okay to rape her. She said that openly on television, and the interviewer was not dropping down from his chair, was, oh, okay.
There's an acceptance of
unacceptable
things. Yeah.
Humiliate European women, they need to be put in their place. And you as a woman are always responsible for rape, because it's always your fault. That's another way of thinking that people don't know either.
I think back in 2007 or 2008, there was an Egyptian lawyer, a female Egyptian lawyer, who invited Arab men to resort to sexual harassment. Wherever you encounter an Israeli woman, resort to sexual harassment. And the person interviewing her asked, is rape allowed? And she said, anything. A lawyer, a secular lawyer. She's not wearing a veil. She's saying anything. We cannot but use everything we have, every mean to liberate Palestine. Because she got away with it, because these statements are not condemned, because these people do not face serious legal consequences, this continues.
Yeah.
And it goes on and on. And some people make horrific statements living in Australia, in the US, in Canada, in France. They get away with it.
Yeah.
And I think the machine behind Hamas, the machine that's fueled by the axis of resistance, is exploiting democracies to push the nastiest messages against Israel and the Jews, but also directly and indirectly against the Western civilization, against Western values. And people are helping them because they think we need to support the Palestinians. So they are subscribing to whatever nonsense that's been pushed out.
Yeah.
And many serious journalists, academics in the West were mourning the death of Ismail Haniyeh, who is directly responsible for the death of tens of thousands of his own people. What are you mourning?
If you're mourning because it's incomprehensible.
Sometimes I think it's not, this is why I'm making this point. It's not only ignorance. Sometimes it is hatred. Some people are evil.
Yeah.
I saw a lady in the UK, I believe an old lady, who was asked, challenged by a protester, do you know that Hamas raped Israeli women? Do you know? Is that okay? Do you know what you're supporting? And she approached the camera and she said, the Jewish women are too ugly to be raped, maybe with a condom. Some people are evil.
And lunatics.
They are blinded by their hatred.
Yes. That evil, that is certainly something that became for me very clear, raised after the Second World War, right? We need to make a better world, and we do all that, we do our best. The evil that came out of the responses, first what they did during October 7th, but then the responses, like this is one too, is like, yeah, there is so much evil, and that's where we need to direct our energy to. Because if you don't fight it, it gets stronger and stronger. And that's what you see today. When you were speaking, Rawan, I thought about in Amsterdam, the soccer, right? The soccer games are well known. Every soccer game for at least 30 years, it is chanting Hamas, Hamas, Jews on the gas. And that is still okay. They do it for tens of years. And I have tried to speak about that. Doesn't matter. It's like freedom of speech. But
You
that's
cannot
normal.
arrest all of them, but you can locate them. If they face serious legal consequences, they stop. But if you say we're helpless, they get away with it. It keeps growing. And about evil, you just reminded me of something that we should have addressed on our social media platforms. Do you remember that lovely, charming lady in New York, I think, who was holding her phone on camera with a message saying they will not come home?
Oh, no, I didn't see that.
I think 3 months ago, there was a lady and she was identified because she was carrying a message, they will not come home. And that's to challenge the notion of bring them home. And then someone else was holding a sign saying, kill the hostages, standing with the pro-Palestine crowd. And I thought about her when I said, like, when I spoke about evil, because I wonder how she felt and how that other person who said kill the hostages felt when they learned about the execution of the 6 Israeli hostages.
They feel okay.
Well, they were probably very happy about it.
They are okay with it because then it's because the narrative becomes different. Well, Israel asked for it. There's always an excuse.
Right.
If that part of thinking, you eliminate all compassion and humanness. There's always an excuse. You asked for it, like a woman asked for it to be raped. It's the same thing.
I was just going to say the exact same thing. Blame the woman that's being raped because she was too attractive, you know, and she becomes the horrible person, not the rapist.
Because to compare for sure.
I still think I'm going to speak about this on social media. The contrast between someone who's saying kill the hostages, they will not come home, compared with that next to Hirsch's mother, for example. Listen to this message. Can you look at her and express Schadenfreude? You deserve it. I mean, I believe you. I think they were happy, but it is important to show that contrast.
Yeah.
Maybe to remind people that there is objective evil and there is actual suffering. Let's not lose our moral compass. Let's keep thinking, who started all this? Why are many civilians suffering like hell in Gaza today? I've been in Israel now for like 6-7 weeks. I haven't met a single Israeli who said, yes, they deserve it, kill more Gazans. This is psychopathic, and thinking that a nation is happy about war, they're happy to send their sons and daughters to Gaza to kill Palestinians is insane. And I met a lot of people who truly believe the Israelis love war and they're happy about committing a genocide against the people in Gaza.
I'm wondering, I wonder about the majority of the people in Gaza, the Arabs. Do you think that they mostly believe that Israel is to blame, or do they put the blame on Hamas where it truly belongs? Because they're the human shields, they're being prevented from leaving, the food has been stolen by Hamas, despite all the humanitarian aid that Israel has provided. So what do you think the Gazans think? Who's the real perpetrator of all the problems for them?
When I see the support Hamas still enjoys in Gaza, I am disappointed and I wonder, do you people really, can you forgive Hamas for what's happening to you now? Do you not know who started this? If anyone knows, it's the Gazans. However, we must admit that some hate the Jews so badly, they don't care, they want them dead. And some are frightened. And let's be fair, we have seen some video footage emerging from Gaza where Hamas militants are executing in broad daylight
Their own people.
people who attempted to steal humanitarian aid, food basically that was donated to the people.
Right.
I'm pretty sure under the surface, the Gazans understand that Hamas is responsible for this, especially that they confiscated humanitarian aid. They want them starving.
Yeah.
And the more intelligent ones, they surely think that Hamas has built approximately 500 kilometers of tunnels underground, and they haven't built a single shelter for their own people. Or you could at least hide your families in the tunnels instead of hiding your militant leaders and the hostages. Hide your own families. So I'm pretty sure that they are losing support in Gaza. That said, let's not, we shouldn't misunderstand and think that there is no anti-Semitism in Gaza. But yeah, it is fair to think.
Yeah, I so agree with you. And the sadness is that kids are to me always innocent, because that's what kids about, right? And I was thinking that speaking all the time with the innocent civilians, I'm like, what innocent civilian has secretly betrayed there are hostages hidden? Nobody helped the hostages from out inside. Nobody. So I don't believe so much in innocent civilians under the age of 16, 15. And they are so brainwashed, you cannot even blame the kids. The suffering of kids is always, for every child, is horrible. So
I'm pretty sure some are opposed to what Hamas has done. But what we've seen on the streets, and I translated many of the videos that Hamas recorded and shared. So I've seen the nastiest videos, and I have to say that, probably without sharing any graphic details, but there is one example that demonstrates that hatred is widespread beyond Hamas and its members. There is a body of a 50-year-old Israeli was stolen. So they killed him and they took the body back to Gaza. And then the body was naked and on the street. They put him on the street, I don't know why. And civilians, normal people, including children, they came to kick the body and to jump on the body. And as a mother, I was thinking the natural reaction when you see a dead body, especially if you're a child, is to panic, to be scared, to be intimidated, but to jump on the body. That was really something very, very disturbing to watch. But this is, I had to remind myself after a while, this is what we've seen on the streets. There were people who were hiding at home. And where are the women? Where were the women? We've seen on October 7th, Palestinian men. We've seen Gazan male attacking men and women in Israel. We haven't seen Palestinian women. And I'm pretty sure that many mothers in Gaza knew that this will bring hell upon them and their children. And I cannot believe that all of them were happy. They knew what was going to happen in Gaza.
Unless they believe that it's still the best way to treat the problem, to get the Jews out. It depends on your belief system.
I must add for the viewers, I have been following the news since October 7th. And on October 14th, Ismail Haniyeh, before Israel responded, on October 14th, he urged the Egyptian government to close the borders and allow nobody out.
Yeah.
Instead of asking for support, at least take the children out of harm's way, he asked the Egyptians to seal the borders because they don't want the Israelis to realize their plan to make a transfer of population from Gaza to the Sinai Desert. It wasn't an Israeli plan. You initiated the war.
But they
It
escaped
was
the
crazy.
tunnels. I think thousands of Palestinians went for 5,000 per family under the tunnels to Egypt. Many went, many left.
10,000. Even those who have the Egyptian nationality
Okay.
were charged between 7,000 to 10,000 US dollars
Yeah.
after the Israelis cleared them. They're not on a blacklist, they're safe, they can go. The Egyptians still charged them a fortune considering their situation and the fact that they're not working.
So they have that's why they want the Philadelphia free again. Well, we can talk about this for hours. I have to watch the time a little bit. It's so interesting to talk to you.
All right, so my anti-Semite that I chose is Candace Owens. She was a conservative media darling for quite some time, and she had been with Ben Shapiro on the Daily Wire, and everybody was very impressed with her. And then she came out with promoting a lot of anti-Semitic conspiracies and blood libels, and she made a comment about a rabbi being drunk on Christian blood. It's just a very ignorant, disgusting statement based on nothing true. And I think she was influenced by her husband, a British young guy who's pretty much right-wing, and his father is Lord Michael Farmer.
Yeah.
And he's totally distanced himself from Candace Owens. He's a Christian and he's very pro-Israel. So she also minimized the Holocaust after calling Mengele's experiments on Auschwitz prisoners as bizarre propaganda. And when her buddy Kanye West recently publicly spewed his Jew hatred comments, she was silent. So as far as I'm concerned, show me who your friends are, I'll show you who you are. So that was my
Okay. Wow, terrible. So disappointing from her, actually.
Yeah.
Liked her years ago. I was like, she's so courageous. Why not to do this? Yeah. Okay, Rawan, please.
I'm going to seize the opportunity as I think you don't often host Syrians and Lebanese and make a case against Hassan Nasrallah. And I'm not referring only to my childhood. He speaks very often. And you rarely hear anyone who hates the Jews more than he does. And he is consistent since I was a child. Secretary General of Hezbollah is obsessed with Israel and the Jews. And he's a pathological liar. He's the first one after October 7th to accuse the Israelis, the IDF, of killing the Israelis at the Nova Party. Even Hamas didn't say it.
Yeah.
He said they mowed them down, they killed them. And it was such a blunt lie that is repeated until today on the streets in the West. So he is despicable. He's still defending Hamas every time he speaks. It's a bigger disappointment than the previous one. And I hope that people nowadays see through him, especially in Lebanon, where the opposition to Hezbollah is steadily gaining momentum.
Yeah, wow. It's so sad, people like that. I will make mine very short. It's somebody that I appreciated in the past, and I see now his true colors. His name is Tucker Carlson, and he invites people that are so questionable to invite to speak to, and laughs behind the scenes about things that, it's just terrible, very disappointing to do what he does. Very disappointing.
My hero is Rawan Osman. So
yeah. Of course.
Because I think that takes an incredible amount of courage and intelligence to make such a dramatic leap from where you have been, how you grew up with your childhood, the stories you've been told, the brainwashing, the extreme anti-Semitic rhetoric, and to go from that to where you are, it took a lot of thought on your part, a lot of research. And so I'm always impressed with intelligent people who, like yourself and Qasim Hafiz and son of Hamas, people who have had this kind of background and they really investigate and soul search. So that's my hero.
Yeah. Wonderful.
I don't know how to respond to compliments. That must be the biggest compliment I've received in my life so far. Thank you so much. I'm humble.
You're welcome.
And my hero must be Rachel Goldberg, Poland. I could not bring myself to go to the funeral. I could not. I tried to go twice and I could not. I heard her speak after she lost her son, after we've listened to her for many months. The way she believed she's going to see her son, the way she truly believed with all her heart that he's going to survive, and yet he was executed. And the last months he spent on planet Earth, he lived under Hamas's mercy. And when I heard her speak, respect, and I noticed after she spoke that she's never mentioned Hamas. I used to think before they killed her son, she did not want to provoke them. But after they killed her son, and she was still as strong as a lioness with a broken heart, but they did not break her spirit or diminish her faith. And still she didn't mention Hamas. I just realized she's way bigger than they are, way stronger. Respect, as we say in Hebrew, kol hakavod. I have goosebumps again. She is the hero of the year, not only the week.
Yeah, it's really a enlightening example. Wonderful, wonderful. My hero for today is Gadi Taub, a professor and historian, and he speaks wonderfully. He speaks great about the things in Israel and outside, and I love to listen to him. There are several, Gadi Taub, so I want to put him on the pedestal.
Well, I want to look him up.
Yeah. I have one very short question. Are you planning to stay in Israel? Are you going for naturalization?
I am converting because I want to make Aliyah.
Yeah.
So at the end of September, I will return to Europe where I live. But the plan is in a year or two, I will be delighted, more than happy. As soon as I can move to Israel, I will. The food is better. The weather is better.
Yeah.
I can go to the Middle East, and to the Middle East I return. And I have never seen a culture such as the Israeli culture. There are many similarities between the Lebanese and the Israelis, but the solidarity, perseverance, the dedication I have experienced in this country, I have seen it nowhere else. And I will be proud if ever I get the chance to relocate.
And I think and I know that you also will be very, very appreciated. Very, very appreciated.
Definitely.
But maybe by everybody. Because what you did, you showed so much loyalty and solidarity and honesty and courage and a mountain of beautiful things that I could say. And people like you really make a change in the world. And I thank you for that so much.
Yes, thank you so much. And we're so thrilled and honored that you could join us today, because you just brought out so much good information and light at a time when there's a lot of darkness.
Yeah, thank you so
But
much.
light always prevails, just as Israel will. Thank you so much for inviting me. It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Shalom.
And it's out.
Ciao.